Alright, hello once again, Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and as part of the Rankin Technical College AWD1111 class, for the fall 2020 semester at Rankin, I've been going through a series of video presentations based on the textbook for the class, which is Get Programming with Node.js by Jonathan Wexler, a Manning publication. I am in Unit 2 of the text and on Lesson 9, which is the second chapter or lesson in this unit. Previously, we learned what Express.js is. It's a framework that can be used for Node.js web apps. And as it says, the rest of this unit, so chapters 9, 10, 11, and then 12 when we have the capstone, is dedicated to exploring Express.js functionality and using some of its built-in methods. So this particular lesson, as mentioned here, covers routing and how a few more Express.js methods allow you to send meaningful data to the user before building a view. A view will be really, for lack of better words, typically the return HTML. We also walk through the process of collecting the query string, and we end the chapter by touching on the Mvc design pattern. All right. And MVC, the thing about that model view controller, it pretty much is the same regardless of the language that you use it in. But of course, there'll be some intricacies based on the software package that you're using. And what I mean is, when you think about it, MVC in Node.js will not be exactly the same as MVC will be in Node, for example. All right. So the author says that we want to build a homepage for our recipe app that people can visit, okay, with an estimated date of completion for the app. That's kind of important because what you'll see later is we actually want to take that date and put that date into a separate file, and we want that date, for lack of better words, to be floating. In other words, if the project is done earlier, we want to be able to change that date and have it immediately reflected on the home page. And if it's, whether it's earlier or later. All right. So as the author says here, after we set up our routes, we'll be able to store some data in a separate module and respond dynamically with that data. This is where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. One thing that JavaScript is known for is the word that I use called dynamicity. And basically what we're saying is we want to be able to show stuff in real time and as it changes. All right. So in Lesson 8, as mentioned here, we constructed our first Express.js app, which had a route handling get from our home page. Another way to describe this, as it says, is we used an application endpoint. All right. In Express.js, as the author mentions in here, a route definition starts with the app object, followed by a lowercase HTTP method. So here's an example of a post. All right. Now, if we put this in right now, okay, this is going to look, I think, at least, we'll find out in just a second, I think this is going to look a little funky. All right. And I'm going to put that in here. I think we can put it right here. We're going to find out. How's that? I'm going to change his word. Instead of submitted successfully, I'm going to say successfully submitted. To me, it just sounds a little more English-like. All right, so I'm going to save that. All right, you may or may not remember this, but when we went back previously, and we came back in and we put in something like /hello, we got an error that says we cannot get to that. Because right now the only thing that it recognizes is just /, which is our home page. But now we just added /contact. All right, and it says cannot get to /contact. Why is that? All right, I mean, we gave it that, right? Didn't we put this in here? /contact. So why can't we grab that? Why don't we get contact information successfully submitted? Technically, I believe it's because the system is looking for a file here called contact.html, which it's not finding. All right, we're going to keep working on this as we continue on with it. All right. So the author says we can use these HTTP methods on the app object because app is an instance of Express. If you remember, that's what we did at the beginning. By installing the package, we inherited routing methods without needing to write any other code. Express lets you write routes with parameters in the path. And they've got an example right here. Get rid of that. Another way is with query strings, which is discussed later on. But route parameters, here's our route parameter right here. All right. The parameter, it's expecting that there is a page called items, and that the parameter that we're going to use is basically, for lack of better words, what gets passed in. So it says it shows an example of a route with parameters. The route in this listing expects to make a request to this items page, plus it expects some vegetable, something with vegetable in there. It could be a string, it could be a number, etc. As it says, a request to /item/lettuce would trigger a route and its callback function, so it should say lettuce. All right. Now, since that's a get, I don't know. I don't think if we put this in, it's going to work. I don't believe that it will. But it wouldn't be the first time I'd be wrong either. Let's see if I can put it in there like this. I said, I am not expecting this to work, but you never know. So let's see. When we go back to here, okay, it's restarted again. You can see that it's restarting when we're making our changes. All right, and it says it can't get to it. I think we're going to start fixing that right now. So we want to initialize a new project called Express Routes. All right, so what I think I'm going to do, I'll do some typing. Not a problem with that at all. So let's have a new project. So first, let's stop this one. All right, and we've got our Express example, and we are supposed to call this Express Routes. Okay. Again, we can do a lot of this from here, so I can do a cd to ... which gets me back to the desktop, make dir, which makes a directory, express_routes, okay, cd to express_routes. All right, we want to do our npm init. This is just something you got to get used to doing. Working with express.js routes. All right, yeah, that looks okay. Let's see if we can back up here and find where we put all that stuff in earlier. There's our install of Express. That should work without a hitch now because of the fact that we did our init first, which I forgot to do last time. We can add our node mod again. Okay. All right, and we can finally come back in here and let's grab, this is the one that we had from before, so we'll use this one again. All right, but I'm just going to clear, basically, I'll clear everything out of it. How's that? All right, now we'll save it into its new area in just a second. So it says what we want to put in here is all of the stuff you see right here. And what's the saying? I'm dumb, but I'm not stupid. Let's bring this back again and see if there's anything in here we can use. There's the port. There's express equals require express. App equals good. We don't have a post here. So we'll grab that get that's right here, which is the same one we had before. Items vegetable. All right, now we're going to come in and say let veg equals request dot params dot vegetable. So in other words, whatever we pass in here is now going to be held, I spelled it wrong, in veg. All right, so we want to change this to backtick. This is the page for, like that. We don't need this anymore. Oh, we lost that stuff. Just gonna grab that. And we'll put that in there. I had typed it in before, so. Now, let's take a second. First, let's do a file save as. And I want to save it in the right directory because this was our Express example. We want it saved into Express routes. And you'll notice that right now we don't have an index.js in there. But now we do. All right. So let's go over the file and what's in it. I'm going to use my verbiage, not what's in the book. So we're setting up a constant here that's going to hold the port. We don't have to do that. We don't have to use 3000. You're going to learn, it's either in this lesson, or it may have even been before, but I don't think so, that there's a better way of doing it than that. When you actually release your app into the wild, so to speak, you have no idea if port 3000 is going to be free on whoever is going to be using your app. So there's a better way to do it than that. But we'll talk about that at a later time. Here we're requiring Express. Here we're making an instance of that called app. All right, so it's able to use the Express's get method. And now items vegetable. All right. Now what we're doing is I'm going to try this with lettuce, and it should say this is the page for lettuce if we've done it right. All right. And when we come in here and listen, it'll still say when we start up, server running on port 3000. Okay, so it's a simpler message than what we had before. All right. So let's clear. And we'll just say node index. There's our server running on port 3000. Now let's try it again with items lettuce. And we're still getting the same error. Route parameters are handy for specifying make sure I did that right first of all. Port, express, app, get. Looks like it's just fine to me. All right. So as it says here, route parameters are handy for specifying data objects in your app. When you start saving user accounts and course listings in a database, and that's the kind of thing we're going to do when we get to Unit 3. One last note about express.js routes. The author says that he talked about how express.js is a type of middleware. It says this feature is great, but you might want to add your own middleware. So in other words, middleware isn't just existing express and other types of methods. All right. It says you may want to log the path of every request made to your application for your own records, as an example. All right. By creating a middleware function, the one that's shown in listing 9.4, that is on page 98 of the book. It says this listing will define a middleware function, and let's just look at it. There it is. We'll look at it in more depth in just a minute. But this listing defines a middleware function with an additional next argument. When you create your own middleware, to my knowledge, you will always put a call to next on the end. Because since you're calling your own functions and not built-in functions, the system needs a way of knowing it's done with what you're working on, and it can go back to something else. And that's what you're allowed to do using this. All right. So as it says, next is provided as a way of calling the next function in your request response execution. From the time a request enters the server, it accesses a series of middleware functions. Depending on where you add your own middleware, you can use next to let Express know that your function is complete and that you want to continue with whatever function is next in the chain. As with HTTP methods, you can create a route with app that runs on every request. The difference is you're adding an additional argument to the callback, and that is next. That's what you see right here. All right. We should be able to do this, and we should actually be able to call this. Now, the one key thing in here, when you look, we're saying app.use, not app.get. All right, request, response, next. And console.log, backtick, request made to, let's say URL, and then we'll put this in here. And there's the call to next. All right, let's go and look again here. All right, and let's come back to here. We saved. Good. Let's see if it logs what we're trying to do here. Now it cannot even get there, which says probably I shouldn't have put it where I put it, but it's okay. All right, it says try adding this to your routes. If a request is made to items lettuce, the request is processed first by your middleware function and then by the app-get route that you created previously. It doesn't like either one of those. And I'm just trying to figure out what, if any place, I screwed up here. Okay. Well, it obviously doesn't like something I'm doing. And typically when this happens like this, it's something really simplistic. All right? Because I always goof up at the easy stuff. All right. Calling next at the end of your function is necessary to alert express.js that the code is completed, so it doesn't leave it hanging. You can also specify a path for which you'd like your middleware function to run. Okay, we're not going to do that right now. In the next section, we talk about handling the routes and responding with the associated data. So, what does the express.js use function do? It allows us to define our middleware functions that we want to use with Express. I'm going to check one last thing. All right. Okay, I'm over on time, so I'm going to stop and I'm going to pick it up in just a couple.